My name is Pam, Pamela Gill, tuku ingoa, ko te aitanga hauati, raua ko Ngāti Parau, ngā iwi. Lived in Tāmaki, Makaurau for many years now, and I've been really blessed to work here on this project Twin Streams, for about 10 years now. And so it's kind of been interesting. It's this project, it started many years ago, and probably the 90s we were starting to think about it, and they wanted to do some developing in the Waterway area, and this is Waitakere City Council and the Auckland Regional Council, so the ARC at that time, said, well, you want to do some developing there, we're really concerned about sedimentation, so erosion. There's flooding up through the valley, and there probably still is, and so we'd like you to think about doing some work on the catchment before you do this development. And so Waitakere City, being the eco-city that it was at that time, decided that they'd like to do things differently. And they were very fortunate to get some money from the Ports of Auckland. So we're talking $50 million actually, to put it in context, which is a load of money. And that was a moment in time, and they said, and they applied for that, and they said, we want to do it differently. We don't want to just get contractors in to restore the stream sides. We actually want to include the community in this. So I work for a community organisation, EcoMatters Environment Trust. We're based in New Lynn. And my role really is about working with community to understand what some of the issues are on our streams. And so I've just been to Olympic Park, sussing out what we're going to do tomorrow, so I work over there as well, in the faux catchment, but I've worked over this area for many years, specifically Glen Eden, and so yeah, that's what happened with Waitakere City. They did get this money. A lot of the money was actually spent on buying up properties that were in the floodplain. Funny that, you know, they put these, they allow these houses to be built in floodplains, and then they get really concerned when it floods. And so, you know, you guys are probably aware of some of that kind of stuff. Actually, a lot of pressure in our urban environments, on our streamside areas, because if you imagine the more houses that we have all joined together, so if all of those turn into apartments, right, and that's what's happening all over Auckland, and all their roofs are connected and they've got all these paths, when it rains, that rain has to go somewhere, and so it goes onto stormwater drains everywhere. And you know, the drains coming off our roof, and they all come into our streams. Some people think, oh, they're going to some treatment plant. They're not. Okay, stormwater comes straight into our streams. So you can imagine the pressure on it if they're not well designed. And there's lots of examples of places where it's not well designed, where you've got a stormwater pipe coming out into a little stream, which is essentially water blasting the other side of the stream in heavy rain flows. And that's actually quite common. I encourage you in heavy rains to go for a walk and see what's happening. You know, like I said, I was at Olympic Park today, and I ran into a guy who actually lives in his van around that area. He's a lovely guy, and he was like, oh Pam, I came down here in heavy rain, you wouldn't believe how high that got. And I was like, well, I would actually, because I can see the rubbish up on the trees, so I know how high it got. So I'll go back to Project Twin Streams. It was one of the largest urban stream restoration projects in the country. We were attempting to restore 55 kilometres of streamside, and yeah, that's no mean feat in an urban environment. And people might think, oh, you plant out an area and then you can walk away. But if you guys are gardeners, actually the most important thing is the prep and the follow-up. And the follow-up can be years of follow-up, particularly when you're surrounded by weeds all around you. So some of the weeds we get here are Taiwan cherry, Chinese privet, tree privet, trad, although I understand the moth plant. Moth plant, we're going to deal to some of that tomorrow. Although I saw the white cottony bits today, it's already burst. I work on a moth plant project in the Faux. I very much hate moth plant, and I'm a water girl and weed hater, environmental weed hater. Drives me nuts. Rubbish. This is the bane of my life. Okay, it really annoys me. This area here, it's just had a name change recently to Okore Rahi. And so Ceramco Park, if anyone is familiar with Ceramco, is anyone familiar with Ceramco?
A little bit.
What can you tell me about it?
Not very much. It was a big company that made industrial pipes and things like that, I think.
Yeah. What was our old pottery company? Crown Lynn.
Yeah.
They took over Crown Lynn.
Right.
And so this was actually a clay pit, and maybe Zane, can you remember it? Nah. Wayne was telling me about it, and
I can remember the other one at Langholm.
Whereabouts?
Where the Steiner School is.
Yep. So this was a big clay pit, and my friend, who is about 58 now, he remembers playing here as a kid and playing down in the stream, but he remembers it being a big clay pit. And then what they did in their lovely wisdom was they got rubbish from the tip and they put it into bags, bales, and they compressed it and they built this lovely playing field. Okay, so that is what happens with lots of sports fields around Auckland. And so it is so interesting. They many years ago we had a community event here, Christmas carnival, lots of people, lots of stalls, it was all great. We went to do it the following year and council went, actually we're really concerned you can't have any electricity out there, because it might be giving off methane and cause an explosion. And so then I'm often here, they're monitoring the air quality, they're monitoring the stream, we have done so much planting here, right? They're suddenly saying to us, actually we don't think you should be planting there with volunteers. Because of the potential hazard with asbestos and it's like, it is so hard. There's lots of stuff around health and safety, and I was just having a talk with my council colleague today, and I said, look, we did a stream clean up over in New Lynn, and but I'd been told by the council officer there that if we found any asbestos, we had to not touch it and we had to mark it off and call it in. Well, we saw it kind of in the middle of the stream bed, and my volunteer wanted to take it, and I was like, we're not allowed to. And so there was this whole dilemma, and so I have not felt good about it for the past month. And I talked about it with this colleague, and she said to me, well, Pam, if you like, I could get you asbestos training. Because I said, surely I could put some gloves on. It was wet, there's no dust, and carefully put it somewhere where council could come and pick it up. And she said, no, you need asbestos training, you need hazard mask, double gloves, double bag. It's all a major, which I'm good with health and safety. I mean, my volunteer was 75, and he really I actually feel guilty about not letting him pick it up. And like he's like, Pam, I'm 75, I'm good, you know. anyway, there you go. There's a little bit of history about this place, and so we've had. As I said, it's now called Kaurirahi Ceramco Park, but I prefer Kaurirahi because I love supporting Māori ingoa. And so rahi actually means, I think, like side, but according to this, or kauri rahi, and it refers to a large kauri that was in this area. And so the road just over there is called Kaurilands Road. And I remember coming here when I was really young and going to a property that had really large kauri. And so anyway, this was a place, it was a kauri forest. And so yeah, I love mentioning that it was o Kaurirahi. The mana whenua from this area are Te Kawarawamaki, and they have a large rohi. It goes through to the Waitakere ranges. There's other iwi that also have ties around these areas, but particularly Te Kawarawamaki.
How on earth do you manage 55 kilometres of waterway?
Well,
that's an enormous number.
I personally don't. There's a number of community organisations, and to be honest, we only do certain parts of it. And you know, oh sorry. So here's Glen Eden. We're actually here, Ceramco Park, and this is West Coast Road up here. There's many awa in Glen Eden, so little streams as well. And so this is the Waikamete stream, this is the Bishop stream, and this is the Whakarina, and this is where they all meet here, just down the bottom here. Look, there's many pressures on our waterways in Glen Eden and in Auckland, and so as people being interested in caring for the soil, I really encourage you to think about our waterways and the pressures that we're under at the moment. You guys might have seen in the news a couple of years ago down in the West Coast there was a blowout of a landfill. If you think about it, this is a landfill essentially, and lots of our places in Auckland are, and I worry with climate change and the flooding that is going on, what pressure that is going to put on our waterways, and then potentially eroding to expose all this rubbish. It's something for us to be aware of in the future. We used to have sewage overflows in Glen Eden because the infrastructure here couldn't cope, and so we had some keen volunteers who in heavy rain events would go and have a look at their manhole, and they would call it in if it was overflowing with sewage, and then as a result of that pressure from the community, they actually did a huge upgrade here of the stormwater system. So they put in a stormwater storage tank, like huge. Pardon?
Is it big enough?
It is under Harold Moody. It is at the moment. I always worry with some of these things, like in terms of future proofing, and also in cities, the way our systems work. You know, our sewage goes to this huge interceptor it's going to, and then goes to Māngere, and I often think about, could we do these things locally? Anyway, I digress. I mean, one day I was out doing a stream assessment, looking at the weeds and, just looking at this place. This was in Green Bay at La Rosa, where we've done a huge stream daylighting project there, by the way. Spent loads of money, well spent in my opinion, because essentially it had been piped years ago in the 60s. And it was just this boggy stream bank, really, and in winter it was unusable, and it wasn't used very much anyway. And so they actually daylighting means to take the pipes out and return it to a natural stream environment, and that is really cool. But the concerning thing for me is that in Auckland every year the amount of streams that we put into pipes. Our streams play a really important role across the landscape, and they're not just, as engineers would call them, receiving bodies. Imagine what it used to be like. You could drink from the stream. Would you do that now? No, because we chopped all the trees down. That was the single worst pollutant that we did. We chopped all the trees down, and then all the sediment eroded into the water, and sediment is actually one of our biggest pollutants here in Auckland. The national government changed the rules on tree protection, and so they allowed that to happen. So lots of private properties actually have been cutting down their trees. Council is looking at council land and how they can actually plant out more trees. So there's this big drive at the moment to try and plant on council land. So it's kind of interesting. It goes through ebbs and flows, but we need plants. Plants are so good for us, particularly with climate change. Like with it heating up, they provide shelter for us, they keep things cooler, they keep our streets cooler. They're just so important. They help filter, they help mitigate erosion. There's just so many benefits, and that's only talking about that. That's not talking about the what they provide for our native wildlife in terms of habitat and food. To inspire people to plant stuff, native plants in particular. That's really our focus, because one of the another really bad pollutant that's getting into the stream is carbon and zinc from our cars. So less car use would be good. Fortunately we've taken the lead out of our petrol, so that's improving a little bit. But there's so many pressures on our waterways. I'm involved in another project on the Faux, and that's we've got some scientists looking at contaminants that are getting into the stream that we're not even aware of yet. They call it emerging contaminants, and microplastics, huge. And plastic attracts chemicals, other chemicals hang on to it as well, and so we all need to start thinking, and I don't need to preach to you guys because you totally get it, but we need to think about stop doing harm to our environment. Like, there's not a lot we can do. There's some things we can do about the past, but let's stop now what we're doing. If we know that it's harming our environment, let's stop it. I really encourage you to think about how you can take action on the ground. Like, what is it, often we just passively go, oh, there's nothing we can do about it. But keep your ears open when you hear them talking about the tree protection laws. I know that they did want to change that. Analysis here and a planting plan. I'm just going to just stay where you are, but this is Ramco Park. We're here. We've done planting all through here. And so in this area we've done bird monitoring, regular water quality monitoring, planting, weeding, pest control, rongoa, native plant seed collecting workshops. We've done many things here. Really just trying to, and working with lots of school kids too. And I love art projects, art as a way to connect with people's hearts on the environment, so environmental art. Get a sense of our stream, and feel free to ask any questions. I understand, look, I've noticed on our local Facebook pages that people are talking about kaka at the moment. There's been a number of kaka sightings.
I've heard them. Yeah, I haven't seen them, but I've heard them flying over.
Oh, nice.
In the last week.
Yeah.
I thought, wow.
I'm probably, I don't know, 2 kilometres or less as the crow flies, sorry. And yeah, I'm surrounded by tall trees. I've got beautiful meadow, kauri, tōtara, kahikatea, and so as a consequence I'm surrounded by birds. Not loads, but you know, we've got the birds going on. Tree privet, I mentioned those earlier. We love mulch on the edge. Mulch in our trees, particularly as it's getting drier and drier. And also I find mulch can be a good cue for care. Like people think, oh, people are looking after this area, they care about it, don't throw my rubbish. Often in our urban situations, we've only got a few metres of of riparian area, which is not enough.
At school they do the art.
So this is one of the artworks that we've got that our local intermediate did, and there's loads more. I'll come this way. Characters like this that hung over here, and so this whole area had these lovely drooping plants, and for some reason the contractor decided to spray and cut, and
Surely they're taught what council wants.
no, well, no, some of them just don't get it.
No.
And so, you know, there might have been ground cover weeds like this, and so they probably just sprayed up here, and you know, anyway. And so again, this is lovely artworks from our kids, and so we have lots of education that goes into what we're doing. And so red means it's extinct, orange endangered, green it's still here, and perhaps this is what should have been here, but is not any longer.
Really, the flex snail can live for 200 to 300 years. The flex snail.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I wouldn't have thought that was possible.
exactly.
Wow.
I noticed in a recent Facebook post, see me, I can't help but notice the weeds. So I come down to this lovely bush area and I see the Chinese privet up the top.
And privet down there, nice healthy bush.
Yeah.
So what's the stream here, Pam?
So this one's the Hibernia.
Hibernia?
So this lady here was talking about
I was on Bishop's.
Bishop, you were on Bishop. Okay, so this is Hibernia, and so this goes through like to Meadowvale Rise and then crosses the road at Willowbrook and goes to the back of Codyland's school.
Cool. Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is the Hibernia, and often I see eels around here.
Used to a lot more when my kids.
And what's it going into on this side?
So this is the Waikamete.
The Waikamete?
Okay, and so this is what we want. We want a stream environment that has lots of native plants, that are helping to shade the water.
Yeah.
And but this is what happens when they denude the side actually. So over here, for some reason, I think it was to do with putting in this structure, and the next thing you know, hello, eroding.
Yeah.
And then we get the weeds colonising, you know, because you know, bare soil is essentially a magnet for a weed, for plants. Okay, something is going to colonise there, but often it's actually
Not the right thing.
not the right one. So this is a nice shaded area. This is a more established piece of bush. It's like that right through to here, and but we still have the pressure in heavy rain events. See how there's all that you know, the leaves up that tree, so you can see how high the water would have come recently, and that's the tension in urban areas. That's what happens, and so always be mindful if you've got kids and it's heavy rain, that our waterways can come up quite quickly, but hey, that's what it's about. That's natural. It's our natural systems at work. Lots of these plants, as you can see, you know, most of them can actually handle it. So we plant, you know, one of the things I see people doing incorrectly actually is putting flax right on the stream bank. That acts as a hard barrier, so that when it rains, it can actually rip the side of the bank out, and it will eventually. Really good plants are cabbage trees, sedges, things that have a more slender trunk to start with, and can develop good root systems. But you can see the kawakawa obviously handles it really well. Yeah.
There's the stream after a little bit of a, it's a good little...
It's about so good, you know how it is.